Never mind. There we go. All right, we'll try it with this one then. Oh dear. Okay. Gabe, thank you for your help. I don't think that one's gonna work though. Okay, so looking at this section, this is the section where we actually see the hair get cut, and it's very dramatic. I mean, have you ever heard scissors referred to as a glittering forefex?
No.
No, this is very dramatic. It's supposed to be over dramatic, and moreover, what gets cut along with the hair?
Her neck.
Not her neck.
Her ear.
No. Who jumps in the way?
Oh, silk.
Yes, we get this very dramatic scene of the sylph going, no! Like in slow-mo. I want you to imagine that in slow-mo. You have the sylph that just goes, no! And throws itself in the way. And the sylph, of course, gets cut in half. Now,
With the scissors?
with the scissors, yes, a wretched sylph too fondly interposed. So the sylph jumps in the way. Fate urged the shears and cut the sylph in twain.
Wait, how big is this silk?
They're small little sprites.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, they're small little sprites. So the sylph tries to jump in the way, gets cut in half, but because this is a mock epic, are any of these deaths actually going to stay?
No.
No, much like any Marvel movie, somebody's going to come back, right? Huh?
I said Spider-Man.
Spider-Man?
Yeah, he
Said
he
Spider-Man.
has a- he has
In
a
the
Spider-Man.
Vampire Diaries, no one dies.
He has a new
We don't know
movie
yet.
coming out.
Well,
Like, he hasn't even been revived yet.
yeah, I know.
We find a loophole.
I mean, like, I'm pretty sure Eric Killmonger is dead. I'm pretty sure Ronan the Accuser is dead. Other than that, I don't think anybody else in the MCU ever actually dies.
In Vampire Diaries,
Damn near half of them died.
Loki is not dead. Bite your tongue.
Loki is dead.
Loki is not dead. Bite your tongue.
Loki.
All right.
Spider-Man.
Okay, seriously, Tom Hiddleston is supposed to be on a Loki-centered show on,
Low-key.
anyways.
in Vampire Diaries, no one dies
Yeah.
ever. They always find a
Okay, but
loophole and a way to come back.
No,
Exactly.
that's what the hell is
Anyway, okay.
the
Back to the hair. The sylph gets cut in half, but because the sylph is made out of air, is air ever going to be cut in half and not like get back together?
No.
No. So the sylph will come back eventually. The hair itself, though, gets cut away. Now, ladies, if you had somebody come up behind you and you suddenly feel your hair get snipped, what are you about to do? Punch them, stab them with their own scissors,
Cut the rest of your hair because you don't want it to look weird.
cut off the rest of your hair because you don't want it to look weird, okay? All fair responses. So here we actually get Belinda's reaction.
It's pretty short.
Then flashed the living lightnings from her eyes, and screams of horror rend the affrighted skies. Not louder shrieks to pitying heaven are cast, when husbands or lapdogs breathe their last, or when rich china vessels, fallen from high, in glittering dust and painted fragments lie. So here we see the beginning of what's going to go down. And what we'll actually see, we've got to have, because this is an epic, or rather a mock epic, we've got to have another great battle. We've had the great battle between the players of Ombre, but now that has to turn into something more. Because as soon as Belinda screams, as soon as she feels the hair get cut and screams, what's going to happen?
She's gonna get revenge.
She's going to get revenge. Victoria?
Everybody would look at her.
Everybody would look at her screaming. And what's she going to do? Is she going to just keep quiet on what happened?
No.
She's going to start yelling. She's going to start screaming that somebody cut her hair. And if somebody cut her hair, what's going to happen to all of the young men and women that are gathered there? What are they going to do? Check their own hair.
They're gonna go to fight the Baron.
Hmm?
They're gonna go to fight the Baron.
They're going to go and fight the Baron? Okay, some of them maybe. But is everybody going to listen to Belinda?
No.
No. How many of you are here, how many of us in here already are already saying that this is an overreaction?
Yep.
Her screaming like this is an overreaction.
No.
I will note it is mostly the gentlemen in the class who are raising their hands.
But I would be pretty mad if someone come by.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
would
not. I feel like
go.
I'm already mad.
Oh, I would be more than that. I would slap.
Okay.
Can you sue someone for cutting your hair? Yes.
If you're a model or something.
Okay, Kendall, let me make something clear. You can sue someone for anything. Whether your suit is successful or not, that's the other question.
Like I can sue
Real quick though, like in all seriousness though, if this were to happen today, it is quite likely that the Baron would get slapped in the face with a lawsuit. Actually, he would probably end up with an assault charge over this.
Yeah, I think I would charge them.
Technically, this is assault. So Canto 4, though, is all about the breakdown of these very genteel, civilized young men and women who are going through who are starting to fight over the matter of the hair. So that's all Canto 4 is the fight over the hair. Now, what happens as they're all fighting over the hair? What's the big thing? What is the big thing that we see happen as a result of the fight over the hair? What would smooth things over a little bit?
She cutting his hair?
Her cutting his hair, maybe. But who still has the hair? Once the fight starts, who has the hair? Good. He cut it. It's in his hand. Belinda is angry because she's lost the hair. It's been cut off of her head. Is the Baron angry? Is the Baron upset? Did the Baron get what he wanted? Yes. So he still has the hair once this fight breaks out. And so because of that, has he suffered at all for this? No, this was his whole plan the whole time. So what we see the Baron has the hair when the fight breaks out. But by the end of the fight, where is the hair? Anybody know? Do we think the Baron at least should lose the hair? Should he be able to keep it?
No.
No?
But I have a feeling he gets to keep it.
You have a feeling he gets to keep it? Okay. Okay. The hair, as we go through all the various arguments that are happening here, restore the lock, she cries, and all around, restore the lock, the vaulted roofs rebound. No fierce Othello in so loud a strain roared for the handkerchief that caused his pain. And I suddenly wish I'd had you guys read Othello instead. Oh well, that's okay. So Belinda believes that the Baron still has the hair. And this means that the Baron is getting what he wants out of this situation. And there's no punishment for him and no recompense for her. However, Pope tries to smooth it over here. Can I have a volunteer with it to read this stanza? Yeah.
But trust the muse, she saw it upward rise, though marked by none but quick poetic eyes. So Rome's great founder to the heavens withdrew, to Proculus alone confessed in view. A sudden star it shot through liquid air, and drew behind a radiant trail of hair. Not Berenice's locks first rose so bright, the heavens bespangling with disheveled light. The sylphs behold it kindly as it flies, and pleased pursue its progress through the skies.
Okay, so what happened to the hair? It flew away. What do we call that when you have something that after its death sort of rises up and flies away into the heavens? Any ideas? It's a very specific term. It starts with an A. Sophia looks like she's trying
Angel.
to... Huh?
Angel.
No, not... Close. We do have the idea of ascension with this. Okay. Chalk that misplaced. It's called an apotheosis. All right. So the hair is apotheosized. Essentially, that means the hair is lifted up into the heavens, and this is something that we see frequently in classical mythology. Because what happens, for example, when a hunter stumbles on the goddess Diana, the goddess Artemis, and her followers while they're bathing, and he's got his hunting dogs with him. What ends up happening to that poor guy? Sophia?
He is turned into a deer and then killed by his own hunting dogs.
He's killed into a deer and turned on by his own hunting dogs, and eventually what happens to him? He ends up as a constellation that we're fairly familiar with up in the sky. Does anybody know Orion's Belt?
Yeah, that one's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So that is exactly what Pope is saying here. This beau monde shall from the mall survey and hail with music its propitious ray. This the blessed lover shall from bit for Venus take and send up vows from Rosamunda's lake. This partridge soon shall view in cloudless skies when next he looks through Galileo's eyes, and hence the egregious wizard shall foredoom the fate of Louis and the fall of Rome. So looking at this, instead of the hair just being lost somewhere in the fight, the hair ends up being apotheosized. It's taken up into the heavens and made into a constellation. And who is going to make wishes upon this constellation and send prayers up to this constellation? This the blessed lover shall for Venus take. Who's this constellation dedicated to? Venus. It's going to be prayed to by people who are making supplications to Venus. It's going to be a constellation for lovers and beautiful people, right? So, Pope continues, then cease, bright nymph, to mourn the ravished hair, which adds new glory to the shining sphere. Not all the tresses that fair hair can boast shall draw such envy as the lock you lost. For after all the murders of your eye, when after millions slain yourself shall die, when those fair suns shall set, as set they must, and all these tresses shall be laid to dust, this lock the muse shall consecrate to fame, and midst the stars inscribe Belinda's name. So why is it ultimately that Pope says Belinda should get over it? What's happened to her hair? And what does that mean for her? We already talked about her hair has been apotheosized. It's become a constellation dedicated to lovers. What does that mean for Belinda herself?
Wouldn't she want that to happen? Like, wouldn't that be like something that was good for her just because, like, if that's what her hair symbolized, then, like, that's kind of a reflection of who she is.
Excellent. Good. So it's a reflection on her and who she is and how beautiful she is. Sophia?
Is it like saying that she should move on from this?
She should move on from this. Why? Having her hair up in the heavens as a constellation, what does that mean for her?
She lives on forever. She lives on forever.
She's going to live on forever. Not just her, but her beauty will live on forever because now it is immortalized in the constellation of her hair. Now, here's the silly question. Where else have we seen this theme before? Sophia?
The Shakespeare poems, sonnets of the young lady.
Uh-huh. The young man.
Young.
Good. Shakespeare's young man sonnets. Even though you're going to get old and ugly and wrinkly, your beauty shall live on forever in my poems. Right? So even if Belinda's hair, that is Arabella Fermer's hair, didn't actually get apotheosized into a constellation, does Arabella Fermer's beauty still live on in this poem. So was Pope right? Yep. All right, and should she get over it? Maybe, possibly. All right. So that is the end of the Rape of the Lock. Real quick, just a quick review. Who can tell me, what do you guys remember about Menippean satire that I still have all written up here?
It's a long and winding narrative. It's a long and winding narrative that affects the causes of thinking.
Good.
It's sometimes absurd and grotesque.
It's kind of logical too.
I was gonna say something like that, I think.
Okay, so very scatological, very absurd, long winding narrative. Do you guys think you should remember this? Because it might show up on a test.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. How about Horatian satire? Somebody else tell me about Horatian satire.
It's shorter, more focused, and it relies on parody.
Good. Shorter, more focused, relies on parody. Good. Jackson.
It mocks poor manners and lacks social graces.
Good. It's mocking poor manners and a lack of social graces. Yes.
It's gently chiding.
Gently chiding, kind of wagging a finger in your face, saying you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't be like this person. And it's also always kind of indirect. It's always sort of giving the idea that it's sort of saying you shouldn't be like this person over here. And it'll never actually directly address that person by name. But it's always one of those things like, you know who I'm talking about, even if I don't tell you their name. You know who I'm talking about, who does that. So that's Horatian satire. We've already heard a little bit about Juvenalian satire from the Roman satirist Juvenal. And while Horace actually Horace was actually fairly close to the imperial household. And he actually had to be kind of careful with what he said, because if you're making fun of the emperor and his family, is it safe to get too specific? Is it safe to be too pointed in your satire? No. Juvenal is a little bit farther removed, though. So Juvenalian satire is also shorter. Also very focused. But rather than relying on parody, it relies on vituperation. Raise your hand if you have ever heard the word vituperation before. Nope. Okay, I didn't think so. Vituperation is a term that specifically refers to the very biting, acerbic, sharp nature of Juvenalian satire. So whereas Horatian satire mocks poor manners and a lack of social graces, we'll say Juvenalian satire, it doesn't just mock, it attacks individuals, their flaws and behaviors. And not even necessarily just their flaws and behaviors, it'll also make fun of your face, it's ugly. Your hair, that's so stupid. Your clothes, oh God, how could you wear that? And rather than gently chiding, it is biting, acerbic, and sharp. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the Dunciad and A Modest Proposal, both of which are examples of Juvenalian satire. And I'm trying to think, do we have a modern example of Juvenalian satire? Anything we could think of in particular?
I think of like political cartoons.
Political cartoons, they can be. Sometimes they're very gently chiding, but a lot of the time they're you know, they will get into almost this Juvenalian mode. Can we think of anything else? Gracie?
The part in SNL where Alec Baldwin was like Donald Trump with everyone. Because he's like making fun of how he acts and stuff. Well, I know that he's like SNL's kind of like a mixed bag, but like that's a stage.
Yeah, no, that could be. That could be, yeah. I could go for that. All right.
South Park.
South Park, it depends on the season. And depends on the episode that, like, it depends on the particular episode. So whereas Menippean satire will take this very long and winding route to calling you an idiot, and Horatian satire will be like, don't be like this person, I'm never going to name this person, but don't be like them. Juvenalian satire is going to be like, I feel like I should probably pause the video to actually say it now. Juvenalian satire is going to be like, you're an ass, everybody knows you're an ass, and you need to stop being such a insert string of profanity here. Like, you get the idea. So Juvenalian satire is really in your face, and it's gonna try to rip your head off. One of the best examples of Juvenalian satire that we have since Juvenal himself is from Alexander Pope. A good deal of Pope's writing is actually based around, what's the word I'm looking for? A good deal of Pope's writing is actually based around imitating Horace and Juvenal, and he kind of switches back and forth. Like, he'll take Juvenal's mode and apply it to Horatian content, and vice versa. He'll approach from a Horatian manner something that Juvenal would have touched on in his poetry. Now, what he kind of takes off on his own, he actually does this entire 4-book satire called, actually, he only does the 2nd through 4th book. I'm trying to remember who does part 1 off the top of my head, and that's not coming to me. But he's got this 4-book satire called the Dunciad. Now, to give you a little bit of background, the Iliad. What's the Iliad about? Anybody remember? The Iliad is the Trojan War. The word Iliad literally means the Song of Troy, because Ilium is another name for Troy. The Aeneid is the Song of Aeneas. What's the Dunciad?
Combination of
Well, the Dunciad is the song of the what? Dunciad. The Dunciad is the song of the dunces. What's a dunce?
the stupid person or someone being in trouble.
Okay, someone who's in trouble or a stupid person. Where do we usually see the word dunce in our modern day? If you look at old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
The little cone hat.
The little cone hat, the dunce's cap. And who always had to wear the dunce's cap?
The dumb people.
Who?
I don't know, I just said the dumb people.
Daffy. So Daffy, sometimes Elmer Fudd, sometimes Bugs Bunny himself. But Mackenzie, what did you say?
The dumb people.
The dumb people.
Characters.
Good. So dunces are people who did something stupid. So the Dunciad is actually about idiots, or people who Pope believes are idiots. So, for example, this is very pointed towards certain people. This is very pointed towards certain people that Pope himself wanted to attack. These are people who he sees as his intellectual inferiors, and yet, for various reasons, they gain a lot more attention than he does. Can I have a volunteer to read through the song? Kevin.
Like start it yet?
Yes.
Okay. Yet a moment, one dim ray of light, indulge dread chaos in eternal night. Of darkness visible so much be lent, as half to shew, half veil the deep intent. Ye powers whose mysteries restored I sing, to whom time bears me on his rapid wing. Suspend a while your force inertly strong, then take at once the poet in the song.
Okay. So this is actually the introduction to book 4. Remember that there are 3 books that come before this of Pope going through and just ripping people to shreds. But here we see what is kind of moving in on the world and destroying everything. Yet a moment, one ray of light indulge, dread chaos and eternal night. Eternal night. Now that eternal night, what do we usually when somebody has a brilliant idea, how do we represent that in a cartoon? Light bulb over their head, right? So you see the light bulb over the head. Okay, cool. What does it mean when somebody does something stupid then? How do we represent that? Not a light bulb. What's the opposite of that light bulb showing up?
A dark night.
Darkness coming in. So here he's talking about this eternal night coming in, and this is the eternal night of dullness. That is stupidity moving its way in to England and everywhere. So, of darkness visible, so much be lent as half to show, half veil the deep intent. So the darkness is moving in, but people don't recognize what it means. People don't realize what's coming, and it's kind of terrifying. And we get these very apocalyptic images. Now flamed the dog star's unpropitious ray, smote every brain and withered every bay. Sick was the sun, the owl forsook his bower. So we get these very apocalyptic images leading on as chaos and night move in. And then here we get, can I have a volunteer to read this next stanza here? Just these 4 lines. Gracie, if you would.
She mounts the throne, her head in cloud concealed, and broad effulgence, all below revealed. 'Tis thus aspiring dullness ever shines, soft on her lap, her brilliant sun defines.
Okay. Now looking at this, she mounts the throne. What scene is this that we're seeing as night is coming in? You've got a figure who is mounting a throne. She is ascending a throne. What is the what do we call it when somebody first takes the throne? Starts with a C. A coronation. Good. So this is the coronation of a goddess. But this isn't a goddess that we would want to worship. What's the goddess's name? Maddie, you should know this one. You asked me about it.
The goddess of what?
What's the goddess's name in the Dunciad?
Dullness.
Good. The goddess Dullness, which is another word for stupidity or foolishness. So here we see the goddess Dullness mounting her throne. And here's who Pope is very specifically attacking throughout the Dunciad. Soft on her lap her laureate son reclines. This is referring specifically to the poet laureate of England during this time. And we heard about Dryden being the first poet laureate of England. Does anybody know who the poet laureate is now? Not like right now, but during Pope's time. Nope, I didn't think so. His name is Colley Cibber. And Pope pretty much ridicules him throughout the Dunciad. Why do we think that is? Who does Pope probably think should be the poet laureate of England? Himself. And Colley Cibber is his rival throughout his career. And so Pope doesn't take too kindly to that. And as the goddess Dullness mounts her throne, as she's coronated, who is she subjugating? Who is she tying up in chains? Can I have a volunteer to read? Not the whole thing. If you could just take it down to adorn, I think that would be good. Victoria, you want to go for it?
Beneath her footstool, science groans in chains, and wit dreads exile, penalties, and pains. There foamed rebellious logic, gagged and bound. There stripped fair rhetoric languished on the ground. His blunt arms by sophistry are born, and shameless Billingsgate her robes adorn.
Okay, so who do we see being tied up like captives at the foot of Dullness's throne? Beneath her footstool, science groans in chains.
Logic.
Good. Logic is one of them. Who else? Gracie? Wit. Morality. Science. Sophistry. His blunted arms by sophistry are born. No, sophistry is actually sophistry is actually a guard that's seems to be like holding them down. But good. So all of these things: logic, wit, science. Trying to remember, morality. All these things, are these positive things that we like? Yeah, they're things that we should admire. But in actuality, the goddess Dullness, is she letting them be, or is she harming them?
She doesn't like them because they're like smarter than her, or like better than her in the eyes of everybody else.
Good. And so we see Dullness taking over and, of course, destroying everything else in her path. All right. So we've got that. There's more that goes on with this. Like, if I can find line 500. Okay, here we go. We see, so Dullness has taken over in England, but here, towards the end, we actually see that Dullness tells all of her servants to go out and spread her message throughout the world. Then blessing all, good children of my care, to practice now from theory repair. All my commands are easy, short, and full. My sons, be proud, be selfish, and be dull. Guard my prerogative, assert my throne. This nod confirms each privilege your own. So here she's sending all these figures out to destroy wit, to destroy reason and logic throughout the world.
Did she say she's telling them to be selfish and dull?
Yep.
She is?
Yep. Now remember, this is one, a mock epic. Pope seems to like those a lot. But two, this is also meant to be this Juvenalian satire. So it's actually very pointed with some of the people that it calls out, like Colley Cibber, who's repeatedly shown as the head dunce. That he's the stupidest one, and he's the one that's sort of leading the way with the goddess Dullness. Does that make sense? Do we have any questions on this? Okay, how much time have we got? I do want to very briefly address Swift's modest proposal, and we'll finish up with that tomorrow. The modest proposal is nowhere near as long as that, but can I have us start off with just reading the title? Can I have a volunteer to just read the title? Gabby, I haven't heard from you today.
A modest proposal for preventing the children of poor people in Ireland from being a burden on their parents or country, and for making them beneficial on the public.
Okay. So, looking at this right away, how do we feel about this title?
It's very straight up.
It's very straight up. Okay. What else? Sophia, you had a very visceral reaction. Yikes. Why yikes? Can you explain that yikes a little bit?
Just from this title alone, it's like, this is not going to be good.
This is not going to be good. What makes you say that?
Because it's telling children, like, don't worry, you won't be a burden on anyone if you do this.
Okay, it's telling children you won't be a burden on anyone?
I was kind of saying that, and how they're saying that, like, when you're poor, you don't really, like, help anyone out. So if they can, like, figure themselves out and not be as poor, then they can be more, like, useful to the society.
Okay, but here is my silly question. Are children meant to be useful?
For jobs, family jobs, like farming.
Family jobs, maybe. But are children meant to be useful to the public?
No.
Making them beneficial to the public?
No.
Nah, not really. Now, I will say that during this time period, they have a very different conception of childhood. Childhood nowadays is this period of innocence and this period of a lack of responsibility. But have any of you watched Disenchantment? Out of curiosity? Yeah, it's by the same guys that did Futurama. Anyway, there's an episode where, like, they show this, it's a fantasy medieval setting, but they show this one woman has a bunch of babies, and when they start crying, she's like, oh, if you can cry, you can work. And they immediately shut up. So, anyway. Okay. So, what we need to look at with a modest proposal, we need to look at its rhetorical situation. So the way I always teach rhetorical situation when I'm teaching Composition 1 is to fill in the gaps. All right. So genre, audience, purpose, and stance. And what we need to be aware of as we're reading a modest proposal is that there is dramatic distance that exists between a narrator and an author. Ostensibly, is this written by Jonathan Swift? Yeah. Is it published under Jonathan Swift's name?
Yes.
Yes, it is. But is this proposal something that Jonathan Swift is seriously putting forth to the world? Or is there a difference between Jonathan Swift and his narrator? There's a difference that exists between them. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hold up. I am gonna let you guys go a little bit early. We'll finish up with the modest proposal tomorrow. I will endeavor to have some treats for you since it will be our last day of class.
That's such a good movie.
We'll see what happens.
Whatever we get.
We'll see what happens.
Be grateful.
Anyway, so if you have any questions on anything, let me know. Your term paper is due in tonight. If you run into any trouble, email me. I will be on my computer and can help you if you run into issues. And I do have office hours between this class and next class, and I am available here after next class if you guys want to stop by and ask me about anything. All right, and people are coming over here already. Give me a second. Let me pause this, or stop this rather.